Hello and welcome to the 37th broadcast of the Nerdflix podcast. Today we are going to do something a little bit different. We are going to discuss the season finale of the Book of Boba Fett and the new Jurassic World Dominion trailer that just released. So let's get started.
Hello. I'm the Doctor. Basically, run.
Why so serious?
Hello, Peter.
Verb, I know what we're gonna do today.
I got a bad feeling about this.
This is the way.
Welcome to the Nerdflix podcast. Before we get started, I'd just like to say that there will be some major spoilers for the Book of Boba Fett in this episode. So, if you want to watch that first, go ahead, because we are going to spoil the whole finale. At the end of The Mandalorian Season 2, we see Boba Fett taking the throne of his former employer, Jabba the Hutt, which set up this new TV show, The Book of Boba Fett. This released in December 2020, late December, I'm going to say the 30th, maybe the 29th, I don't remember the exact date. But that released, and it's had a full season of 7 episodes since then, over the course of about a month. The show, of course, is about one of the most iconic Star Wars characters ever, Boba Fett. He first appeared in Empire Strikes Back, and was also in Return of the Jedi. Had about 4 lines and about 6 minutes of screen time, so he wasn't in for very long, but he became a very popular character and recently got his own spin-off show. But really, this show isn't really just about Boba Fett. It's more of another season of The Mandalorian, in my opinion, because it starts off with Boba Fett. It starts kind of slow with some flashbacks about how he survived, because we thought he was dead, obviously. And then it just turns into more episodes of The Mandalorian. When The Mandalorian shows up in Episode 5, and Boba Fett isn't even in Episode 5, but in Episode 5 we bring back in all the old characters from The Mandalorian. Of course, The Mandalorian, CGI young Mark Hamill, Luke Skywalker, Ahsoka from the Clone Wars when out in live action, and of course Grogu, the child, Baby Yoda. And it all turns into more episodes of The Mandalorian, basically. And it was still, overall, a pretty decent show, not as good as The Mandalorian, but I feel that it could have involved Boba Fett a little more. But let's start talking about the finale. So Boba Fett is going to war with these people called the Pikes over, basically, the land and the business of Tatooine, which he is basically now in charge of. So, at the beginning of the episode, they gather, they get ready for war, and an X-Wing lands on Tatooine. And, of course, X-Wing usually means Luke Skywalker, or the Rebels, but mostly in this show, Luke Skywalker. But when it lands, we find that Luke Skywalker is not in it at all. It's R2-D2 flying the ship with Grogu in the back. Because in the previous episode, Grogu was given a choice to either train to be a Jedi with Luke. He was offered Yoda's old lightsaber, which I have no idea how he got. That was last seen in the Senate in Revenge of the Sith. But anyways, he was also offered this chainmail made by Mandalorians, and if he chose that, he would spend the rest of his life with the Mandalorian without training to be a Jedi. And this was a major decision. I sided with the chainmail, by the way. But yeah, this was a major decision, really, and I thought it was a huge cliffhanger, but this was resolved within a few minutes of the finale, which I was disappointed in. I feel like they could have worked more on that plot line. But we find out when he's lifted out of the X-Wing, he has the chainmail on under that potato sack thing he wears. And so he chose to go with the Mandalorian instead of training with Luke, which is a good thing, because if he stayed with Luke, and if you've seen The Last Jedi, you know he would have been killed in the Jedi Academy accident. Accident? Not really. Incident, that's a better word. So, I'm glad he went the chainmail. I just think they could have worked more on that plotline instead of resolving that very early in the episode. Also, I think Luke sending Grogu in the ship by himself is a bit careless. Who knows what could have happened to him on the way. He may be a little bit sore about him choosing the Mandalorian over him. I don't know. And then after that, the fight begins. It's basic Star Wars fighting, a lot of blaster stuff. Yeah, a lot of explosions, a lot of blasters, pretty average Star Wars stuff on the basic Star Wars planet of Tatooine. So it's not too exciting just yet, but a decent amount of action. One of my favorite parts of this episode is when Boba Fett sends someone out who is supposedly reading off a surrender message from Boba Fett to the enemy. But when he reads it, it turns out that he's not surrendering, he's actually challenging them, and that's when the Mandalorian and Boba Fett swing in to really kick off the battle. And by swinging, I mean they come up in their jetpacks and they fly right in, which I thought was cool, but they hadn't really used the jetpacks at all in the series. They hadn't started using them till now, which I thought was kind of dumb, but it's cool to see that they're actually using the jetpacks at least. Later into the episode, the enemy, the Pikes, send in these things called Scorpionic droids. They are these basically giant spider or scorpion-like droids with giant guns on top, and they have force fields around them, so they're very hard to get to. And finally, the Mandalorian takes out his most powerful weapon, the Darksaber. And I was disappointed that we didn't really see the Darksaber at all in the episode until this point, but at least he got it out. But it did literally nothing against the droids and their shields, which was annoying that a cool weapon like that did nothing and he hadn't taken it out till then. But at least we saw the Darksaber a little bit in this episode, and that was about the only time we saw the Darksaber. And this next part might be my favorite, actually is my favorite part of this entire episode. Boba Fett swings in to save the day on the back of his Rancor. Honestly, that was just an awesome scene. I can't wait to see how that Funko is going to turn out, because they just have to turn that into a Funko. But yeah, so Boba Fett on the Rancor, which is awesome, and the Rancor tore up the robots, and Grogu helped a little too, using the Force to disassemble one of them. But Boba Fett on the Rancor was just awesome. And I think if the show amounted to anything, it was that. It really showed Boba Fett's power and control, and it was just a really cool scene. In the previous episode of Book of Fett, we're introduced to not a new character, but a new character to the live-action Star Wars shows, Cad Bane. Cad Bane is a bounty hunter from the animated series, The Clone Wars, and he makes his live-action appearance in Episode 6 of the Book of Boba Fett, right at the end there. And I was really excited to see this character in live-action form and being introduced to the show, because the show is already about a really cool Star Wars bounty hunter, and now introduced another really cool Star Wars bounty hunter. So I thought that this was a cool addition to the show to introduce that character. And in this scene, we get to the point that I had been waiting for, when Cad Bane goes face-to-face with Boba Fett. Now, honestly, I was disappointed in this fight. It could have been a lot more. It was a very short fight, and it wasn't very cool. Like, they could have made a really over-the-top awesome duel between them, but they didn't. It was over pretty soon, and at the end, Cad Bane ended up dying, which I thought was dumb, because they introduced this really popular character. But he died very soon and had very little scenes in the episodes, and so I was disappointed. But it's Star Wars, nobody is ever dead, so of course he could always make a return. He could have done so much more, and I was disappointed to see him go. But, like I said, he can always come back. Later in the episode, Boba Fett loses control of the Rancor, and this is one of my least favorite parts of the episode, when the Rancor climbs a tower and does like a King Kong thing that seemed a bit kind of cheesy for something at the level of Star Wars to do kind of a King Kong reference. So I was disappointed in that. But soon after, they made up for that with Grogu using the Force to calm the Rancor down and putting it to sleep, and then Grogu goes and sits down and takes a nap next to it, which I just thought was adorable. Grogu, of course, is adorable. And then at the end of the episode, we see Boba Fett's partner, Fennec Chan, go and assassinate all of the leaders of the Pikes and all the bad people involved in the show. And I think the ending to this episode was what I was most disappointed in, is that the end of The Mandalorian set up more shows. It set up the Book of Boba Fett. It set up Grogu going with Luke. It had a lot of other plot lines and some twists. This episode lacked twists and new available interesting plot lines. It was just really disappointing at the end. It was an average ending. There is an end credit scene, but the end credit scene was kind of lame. It was Cobb Vanth, the kind of sheriff guy from the Tatooine town we saw in previous episodes and in The Mandalorian, who we thought to be dead is being fixed up by the guy who turns people into, like, robots, which I don't really care about that character at all. But they're not going to make a show for him, really. I don't see why he would need one. He's not a big character. But so it just didn't really set anything up and have a really grand ending like The Mandalorian did. So it was really underwhelming. I think the show introduced a lot of tangled plot lines later in the season with Ahsoka, Luke, Grogu, the Mandalorian, and all those added characters. And then didn't really bring them all back together at the end. Kind of left them loose hanging around. Maybe that will set up some other spin-offs and shows, hopefully that will. But really, I just kind of think they kind of lost the plot there towards the end. Now, there is a Season 2 of the Book of Boba Fett already in production, so we'll see how that goes. And, of course, there are more Star Wars shows coming out in the future. Pretty soon, we're going to get a Kenobi show about Obi-Wan Kenobi. I am very excited for that. Ewan McGregor is returning as Obi-Wan Kenobi, so that should be really good, hopefully. There also, I heard about possibly having an Ahsoka spinoff and a Darth Maul spinoff as well, which would just be awesome. And the last thing I wanted to discuss about the Book of Boba Fett is what The Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett did to the character of Boba Fett. Because when we were originally introduced to him, he didn't talk much. He was a very mysterious and a very bad, evil character. We looked at him as being one of the main villains, even though he's just a bounty hunter. But he seemed like one of the main villains right up there with Darth Vader and Sidious. And in The Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett, they kind of turned him into a good guy and kind of a loving character, which I didn't like. They made him soft, and I wouldn't say they ruined Boba Fett, but they really changed him. And I think they could have addressed that. They could have made him less loving and showed a more harsh side. And so I think they made him too soft, too much of a lovable character, instead of the hard villain he was back in the original trilogy. But let's move on from the Book of Boba Fett and discuss the new Jurassic World trailer just released for Jurassic World Dominion. I had talked about this, I think back on the Jurassic Park podcast, that would make the most sense, about the new and supposedly final installment in the Jurassic World trilogy, Jurassic World Dominion, that is set to release June 10th of this summer. And very recently they released another trailer for it that is really getting me pumped for this movie. In the last movie, Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, at the end we left in kind of a cliffhanger where all of the dinosaurs were released onto the mainland and are now part of the ecosystem. And we open up in the trailer of people herding dinosaurs like they would be cows or horses, like wild horses. And I thought that was kind of a cool idea, trying to control all of the dinosaurs that had been released into the wild. And of course, the dinosaurs are causing all kinds of problems throughout the ecosystem and really just throughout civilization. Not only are they just hurting the ecosystem and the animals, they're also, attacking humans, destroying buildings. And so they're really wreaking havoc throughout the entire world really, because they've spread, and so it's just chaos. It originally said when the movie was announced that characters like Alan and Ellie from the original movies were going to come back, but we hadn't seen them in that first trailer. Well, now in the trailer just dropped, we do see these two characters return, and I'm really excited to see characters from the original Jurassic Park films return into the movie. But what I think is even cooler is that we see the return of Jeff Goldblum as Ian Malcolm. Honestly, one of my favorite characters, like, in any kind of movie. Ian Malcolm is just the greatest, and I love Jeff Goldblum. He's a great actor. And so we see those three original characters return into the Jurassic Park, Jurassic World universe. At one part in the trailer, there was a dinosaur, street chase. So, imagine a car chase, but with dinosaurs, and which I just thought was awesome. And finally, in the trailer, probably one of the most exciting bits in the trailer, for me at least, it wasn't, exciting, it was just cool to see, is that all of those characters I just mentioned, plus basically a lot of the main characters from Jurassic World and Jurassic Park were all together in the same scene, which I just thought was cool to see those two trilogies come together to make one final movie with all the main characters in it. I thought that was a really cool idea and a really cool spot in the trailer. So yeah, that is set to release June 10th, and check out the trailer if you're interested. Okay, that's it for this little review episode of the Nerdflix podcast. Be sure to listen next time, and until then, I will see you next time on Nerdflix.
Phone home.
Goodbye, Parzival. Thanks. Thanks for playing my game.